Bonjour. Today's lesson we're going to talk about the verb jouer, which you've seen before, and how to use jouer, the verb to play with sports and instruments. So as I said, the verb jouer means to play, and this is a regular ER verb. So we're actually going to use this verb to remember how to conjugate all those regular ER verbs. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to drop the ending on jouer. So we get rid of the ER and we're left with JOU. Okay, so here we go. So now we just need to add in the endings. So the ending for je is always an E. Je joue. The ending for tu is ES, pronounced the same way. Tu joues. Il, elle is the same as je. You add an E. Il joue, elle joue. For nous, it's ONS. Nous jouons. And for vous, it's jouez, easy. And il, elle plural is ENT, although it's silent, so it sounds like the je, tu, il, and elle singular forms. Il, elle joue. So, je joue, tu joues, il joue, elle joue. Nous jouons, vous jouez, il joue, elle joue. So when we're talking about playing sports and games, les sports et les jeux, we're going to add something to the end of jouer. And that something is a. We've seen a plenty of times before. And that a means at or to or in. And so what we're really saying is that we're playing at something. So jouer à. Now, here we have the word for soccer, le foot. When a meets le, it becomes o. So, jouer au foot means to play soccer. Jouer au foot. Because this a meets the le and becomes o. Okay? In the plural, if we're going to talk about playing cards, we're going to have more than one, so it's definitely plural. Les cartes. And when a meets les, it becomes o, A-U-X. So we have jouer aux cartes. That means to play cards. Now you might notice that I didn't put in the form for the feminine. That would be à la. The reason why I didn't put it in here is because on our vocabulary list, we don't have any sports or games that are feminine. We only have masculine and plural. We also don't have any that start with a vowel. But those would be and then L apostrophe. Okay? But we don't have any of those on our vocab list for sports and games. So what we're really looking at is just the masculine O and the plural O, A-U-X. So we're going to put these into complete sentences now. If we want to say that I play soccer, we're going to start with I play, je joue au foot. Okay, so not je joue le foot, je joue au foot. And this is exactly how I put it into your vocab list, is with the O instead of the le. So je joue au foot. If we want to say that you play cards, okay, we're going to say tu joues, you play, tu joues aux cartes. Tu joues aux cartes. So if we want to say we play hockey, okay, let's work through it together. We need to, first off, start with nous, oui, and then we need to say play. The ending for nous is ONS. And then finally, O, A-U, okay. Hockey is masculine. Remember, it's one of those special ones where normally H's are silent in French, but for hockey, we don't do the al apostrophe, we just do O. So, nous jouons au hockey. Okay, so you're also going to need to be able to ask people about if they play sports, what kind of sports do they play. So here's a few different ways that you can ask the question. You'll notice in all of these that we have est-ce que. Don't forget est-ce que. Remember, est-ce que is just a question word like do. So, do you play sports? Is our first question. Est-ce que tu joues au sport? Est-ce que tu joues au sport? So, do you play sports? The second question, I'll number these for you. The second question is, est-ce que vous jouez à un sport? Okay, so the difference between questions 1 and 2 are pretty slight. The first one is asking, do you play sports, just in general? Est-ce que tu joues au sport? The second question, and I use a different subject just for some variety, est-ce que vous jouez à un sport? Okay, would mean, do you play a sport? So they're asking about, is there a specific sport that you play as opposed to sports in general? So, est-ce que tu joues au sport? Do you play sports? Est-ce que vous jouez à un sport? Do you play a sport? And then finally, if we want to ask even a more specific question, we can ask, est-ce qu'il joue au basket? Est-ce qu'il joue au basket? Does he play basketball? So now we're talking about using jouer. We're talking about playing a musical instrument. So les instruments musicaux. So musical instruments, instead of using jouer à, like we do for sports and games, we're going to use jouer de. Jouer de. And if you recall, when de meets le, it becomes du. Okay? So then we have, instead of saying jouer le piano, we're going to say jouer du piano. Play the piano. Jouer du piano. If it's feminine, like la flûte, we're going to say jouer de la flûte. Jouer de la flûte. And if it's plural, we're going to have jouer des carillons. Des carillons. Because when de meets les, it becomes des. When de meets la, they don't mix. It just stays the same, de la. And when de meets le, it becomes du. Okay, so if we're going to say he plays the piano, we start with he plays, il joue, and then du piano. And you'll notice, like I did with the sports on your vocab list, I did the same thing with the instruments. The du is what I put on your vocab list. So you really come to associate piano with du when you're talking about playing the piano. Il joue du piano. If we want to say they play the flute, il, could have been elle, but here we're going to say il joue de la flûte. They play the flute. Il joue de la flûte. So if we want to say she plays the bells, we're going to start with she, elle, and then plays, joue, and bells is plural, so we're going to say des carillons. Elle joue des carillons. She plays the bells. Pretty straightforward, I think. And lastly, some questions about asking if people play an instrument, what kind of instrument they play. So again, we have est-ce que for all of these questions. So question 1, we have, est-ce que tu joues des instruments? And here I put musical in parentheses because instrument, you might not need to say musical if we know that you're kind of talking about musical instruments. If it's been mentioned already, if it's already in the context of music, you probably don't need to include this, but you certainly can. So, est-ce que tu joues des instruments musicaux? So, do you play musical instruments? Just very, very general kind of question. Est-ce que tu joues des instruments musicaux? The second question, est-ce que vous jouez d'un instrument musical? Okay, here we have musical because it's plural. Down here in the second question, we have musical because it's singular. Okay, so do you play a musical instrument? Is there a specific one that you play? Est-ce que vous jouez d'un instrument musical? Or simply, est-ce que vous jouez d'un instrument? The last question is asking about a specific instrument. So, est-ce qu'elle joue de la trompette? Does she play the trumpet? Est-ce qu'elle joue de la trompette? Okay, that's the end of our lesson. I'm going to say bonne chance. Hope you took some great notes, and we will talk about this video tomorrow.